wait it out. One moment.
I'll give you after.
Hi, Deepak. Good afternoon.
A very good afternoon.
Good to have you with us.
My pleasure.
Great. So I think we can get started and people can join in as they do. Yes. Good afternoon and good morning to those of you who are joining us from outside of India. My name is Dolly Berry, and on behalf of the India-Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center, I welcome you all to today's webinar on talent and culture, something that is of interest for everyone, irrespective of where they come from. Thank you to NASSCOM for collaborating with us on this. Our guest speaker for today's session is Mr. Arif Aziz, who leads the human resources function at Diageo India and is a part of the executive committee. At Diageo India, he is focused on developing talent, organizational capability, and strengthening the organizational culture to deliver business outcomes. Prior to this, Arif worked in GE for more than 18 years. During that period, he assumed roles towards increasing leadership responsibilities in various businesses of GE. He is focused on facilitating organizational and cultural transformation, leading efforts to build and strengthen talent pipelines, and enable success during different business cycles. Thank you for joining us, Arif. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So with this, I am going to get started, or we should get started on this very interesting and important topic. We will have a Q&A session after the presentation, so please keep your questions ready. Arif, over to you.
Thank you, Dolly. It's a pleasure to be here. So one of the things I learned fairly early on in my life is, you are as good as your understanding of your voice of customer. So I'm not going to start the session unless I have some engagement from you guys and hear from you as to what would you like to talk about, what would you like to hear about. It's more of an informal conversation than a lecture session. So I think it's good if we get calibrated at the beginning and have an appreciation to what you're looking for.
Ablokita, can I? Yes, sorry, go ahead, Deepak.
Yeah, I will start, Arif. First of all, thank you for sparing time. I think we always think about startups, technology, AI, but the most important piece is how to get these things work, and that's because of people. So from your experience and expertise, irrespective whatever work streams we go or whatever functions we go, what are few of the things which we should keep in mind before we even conceptualize any of these startups or processes or projects?
Okay, that's great, Deepak. I'm not going to respond. I'm just writing so that as we talk, I'll try to make sure that it gets covered. If it doesn't, we'll anyways be there together towards the end of the conversation. But thank you for asking. Thank you. What else, guys? Abhay, I see you going off mute.
Yes, Arif. One of the other things I think all the startups from the India-Sweden Innovation Center would like to hear about is, of course, Diageo Ventures is one of the leaders in the space of innovation over the years. Millie's here as well. And I know of the great work that you guys are doing at Diageo. So what are your biggest learnings? What are your, the shortcuts, the cheat sheets that you have figured out from your previous views across Diageo and across Diageo Ventures, which you could possibly share with the startups, which they can use to be as a ready, a ready reckoner, which they can use as a plug and play, which can help them to further fine tune their processes.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Abhay.
Dolly is having some network issues, but I forgot to introduce myself. Thanks, Arif. I'm part of India Sweden Healthcare Innovation Center. I'll actually request some of the startups to give their thoughts as well. I think that will be also just get us an opinion. Maybe Alvokita from Arogya. Do you want to share?
Thanks. Thanks, Harika. Yeah, I think at the moment for us, it's really important to understand, for example, when you are in the recruitment and the scale up phase in a startup, what are the most important points to look for when hiring an employee? I know everyone says that attitude matters more, but sometimes you need to get stuff done. So, where is the balance that you can strike between skills and what the candidate already knows, between, how they project themselves? That sort of a balance is definitely something that we could use some help with.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking that, Arabi.
Yeah.
What else?
Donson from BlackFrog, do you want to ask any questions or any specific thoughts that you come?
This is Fiona on behalf of Donson, representing the organization. When Avlokita, I think she's covered most of it. If there's anything, maybe I'll just add on during the conversation. Yeah. Thank you.
One last question.
Can I go ahead and ask on behalf of a few startups who come and contact us? There's a huge issue about conflict between founders once they move on in the journey. They were probably friends when they were in the college, they got together. The ego clashes and things like that happen after some few years when they are under huge stress and things like that. So how do you resolve these kind of conflicts?
That's a great question. Okay, I've noted it, guys. Let me just share a presentation, which is basically just points versus anything else. And what I'm going to do is I will share some of the stories and my learnings along the journey and see if that resonates with you. Trying to share, it's a little slow. So give me a minute, please. Is the sharing option disabled? I'm just not able to share.
No, Arif, there's no problem. I mean, there's nothing that's been held back from our side.
Yeah. Not sure that continues to build up. Anyways, let me start. And they were anyways only the bullets, so I can always refer to them as we go along. I'll start with the first theme. The theme which I really wanted to talk about as we start the conversation is something which you would have heard from many, many people. And that theme is basically power of purpose. And, the reason I'm talking about it is as you all start looking at scaling up and building teams, one of the first things which you would think is, how do I build a team which has the same passion, same excitement, same energy and enthusiasm for like me or like some of us who are, people who are behind the concept of this startup. How do I ensure that I pass on the same enthusiasm, energy, and so on? And the piece which I want to talk about in this power of purpose is more technical working of our brain than anything else, which hopefully all of you would relate to. Has anyone heard? And as I said, this is going to be an engaging conversation, so would really request you guys to participate. Have you heard what is neocortex? What part of our brain is neocortex, and what does it do? Anyone? Yes? No? I hope I'm audible.
I think people are Googling it.
No, Arif, so you are very much audible, but maybe let's have a listen from you about this.
So neocortex is the part of the brain which is responsible for rational thinking, what we do, and how we think, put data together to arrive at logic, and move from there. There's another part of our brain which is the limbic part of the brain, which is more about feelings, which is more about building trust, which is more about loyalty, and a lot of our decision making and relationship actually happens through the limbic part of the brain. And I'm sure you guys would relate to when I say that there are times when we say, I feel that something is not right, but I don't know what it is. The entire gut and instinct which we talk about. We also say, I feel this is the right thing to do, but I don't really have data or information to support it. And the reason it happens that way is the limbic part of the brain, which is core in the center, which is responsible for decision making, for building feelings, for us to have things like trust and loyalty, is the part of the brain which does not know how to process language. And since it doesn't know how to process language, it cannot specifically sometimes articulate, because it's a lot about how you feel and how you relate to it. And that's where the power of purpose comes in. When you're looking at building a team which is committed to a purpose, committed to what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, you're looking at those individuals relevant to the feelings, the overall purpose which you're articulating, and which comes through, why, not with what, which is logic and data. And there are many examples to this story, but one of the ones which, and I always refer to a guy, and if you have not heard him or read him, his name is Simon Sinek, who's very powerful when he communicates these some of these messages. The example which I relate to is what Mr. Martin Luther King said. To go to his famous speech. Now, obviously, I need some engagement at this stage, guys. Otherwise, what I would actually think is you are multitasking and not really engaged. What was his famous speech? Martin Luther King. What is it called? Anyone?
Well, I know it was a very inspirational speech, but I don't quite recollect it. So I do once again turn to you, Arif.
So there's.
We have a dream.
Arif, I'm allowed to speak.
I have a dream.
Sorry, Arif, can I participate?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the famous speech was, "I have a dream." It started with all about dreaming the future, imagining it.
Yeah, so, I would request you guys, when you get a chance and you have a bit of time, go and search it on YouTube. When you go and listen to I Have a Dream speech from Martin Luther King, you will realize that in his entire speech, when he communicated, he actually talked about a shared purpose. And it was so powerful when you look at the audience of who attended that conversation or that speech. 20% of the people who were part of that rally were actually whites, were not blacks. And they were so touched by his dream speech, where he spoke about his dream is about equality, how people are treated fairly, how people are empowered equally in the world. The reason I wanted to share that example, yes, it's a high level. It's not about running an organization. It's about a leader. But when you touch feelings, when you touch the side of the brain, not heart, brain, which relates to emotions and which takes decisions, you actually build loyalty and you build connect with people. So one of the most important things as you are scaling up and building teams is for you to go back and reflect and see, are you communicating to your teams and saying, I'm going to build the largest online portal for us to go and buy XYZ? I'm going to, build the biggest platform which will change XYZ. Or are you really connecting to something which can get people excited about a purpose, about making a difference to the community they work in, to the world they live in, to the experience they share? And I can use this example because I had this experience of meeting someone from a startup just a few years back, coffee conversation. We were just getting to know a founder who's really doing well now. And I asked him, as in, what gets you excited about this business? And honestly, 30, early 30s, someone who had just started the company, I expected the person to say the dream to make a lot of money, to create a largest XYZ platform and so on. And that person said, Arif, my biggest excitement is that I have a challenge in front of me to really change the way India operates. And then he shared about, how it's going to change, how their platform is going to make lives for some of our people who are not so blessed very different than what it is today. And he said, while I do it, I will create a big business, a big opportunity for me to generate employment, obviously make money, XYZ, and so on. So why I wanted to share that is, go back and think for a minute. Have you created that in your teams, the power of purpose, something which will relate to them as individuals, more the limbic side of the brain versus just the neocortex side of the brain, which is more about data, logic, and rational. So that's the first thing which I wanted to share, guys. Second thing, and I'll share the theme more than then I'll go to some specific points. The theme is more about how you stay humble. So just another person, just another man or a woman, so very approachable. But at the same time, you stand tall in front of your team. And if you're not someone who's seen like that, as you navigate times which will be tough, ups and downs, financial challenges, tough situations, are not able to make a difference, you will realize that you won't be able to have a team which stands by you and helps you navigate that situation. For me, a few personal stories which really helped me learn different ways of leadership and different people who made a difference. One such story happened many years back. I think you can say more than a decade back, when I was in a critical role. I was working with GE, one of the businesses of GE, and we suddenly got into a crisis situation. And that crisis situation had an impact on safety of people, had an impact on our reputation, possibly, and also some liabilities, possibly in terms of legal issues and so on and so forth. And was unprecedented. We had never faced something like this, out of a surprise, out of a blue, not something which was a doing of the company. It just came our way. As we were navigating that situation, since it also considered safety of people and so on, I was pretty much leading that crisis effort. My boss, my manager, lived in US and she worked out of there. She and I had just started to work together for 2 months, so we had not known each other for a long time. I remember each of my functional peers, as they were managing their part of the world, so communication and legal, they would have regular updates in the evening with their global functional leaders and share updates of what they're doing, take inputs, and so on. My boss never asked me for anything. And when I reached out and said, I want to quickly give you an update, can I call you? She just responded and said, if you need me, I'm here for you. But you don't need to call me to give me an update. I must tell you that at that time I felt that, she probably doesn't want to support me, realizes it's a tough situation. If I don't do well, she'll probably put me under the bus and say this guy goofed up. We somehow navigated the situation. We managed, and all the risks were mitigated. We came out successful. A few weeks later, I had my one-on-one catch-up with my boss, and I'd already, kind of disconnected in terms of relationship with her, and I felt that this is not a person I want to work for. We were having the conversation, and then she said, by the way, how are things on that crisis? And I said, this is what has happened. We have handled it well, and so on. And then she made a statement to me, which I still remember, and I think I'll remember for all my life. And every time I get into a situation, I ask myself that question. She said, Arif, you are living thousands of miles away from me. The best context to deal with that situation and crisis was with you. You also are there in the job because I trust you that you can deliver. If I trust you that you can deliver, and you are the best person to have the context, then you have to realize you are completely empowered to take decisions, and I'll back you, whatever may happen. I'm here for you if you need help and you want to bounce off. But in terms of your responsibility and ownership, it's yours, and you have the complete freedom to operate. However, if this were to happen, you have to first call me before you do anything about it. And I think it was a very powerful conversation. What she basically did was she empowered me completely, wasn't micromanaging, also gave me a strong feeling of trust that I trust you, and that's why you are here. But at the same time, she also created a framework for me where she said, if this were to happen, call me before you take a decision. So as you're building your teams and you're thinking about scaling up, I must say how you empower your teams, create a freedom within a framework. So it's not about letting go completely, but it is also not about micromanaging. It's about creating that freedom within a framework, which will really energize, which will really bring the best out of your talent. You have to answer that question for yourself as to what that framework is and what levers of freedom you will let go. But until you create it, you will not really create an opportunity for your organization to scale up and grow. Another example, I'm sure you guys would know about Mr. Abdul Kalam and Satish Dhawan, long story, which happened when Abdul Kalam was put in charge of, designing the satellite as he joined the ISRO. And he was working under the leadership of Professor Satish Dhawan. Year one, the entire experiment failed. And when the entire experiment failed and the satellite went into Bay of Bengal, there was a media conference which was organized, and Professor Satish Dhawan actually went there as the leader of ISRO and said, "We goofed up, but in a year's time, we will deliver success." A year later, when actually the success happened and the team delivered the entire program, the person who communicated the story of success was Dr. Abdul Kalam, not Professor Satish Dhawan. Professor Satish Dhawan was behind the scene. The point which I'm trying to make is that you are building large teams. Your success will depend on the success of the team. The entire credit should not come to you. Share the credit. When you share the credit, you build loyalty, you build commitment, and you also energize people to deliver greater outcomes than what they can. The last thing on this theme of standing tall, I would say is a lot of us, when we talk to people about ideas, about what works, what doesn't work, what our customers are saying, what solution may work, we are quite passionate about what we are thinking. And we are quite passionate about our ideas, which we should be. It's absolutely the right thing. If you're not passionate, you can't take it through. But always realize that the best ideas, and I hope you guys can see me and you are seeing me, the best ideas don't come from here. The best ideas actually come from here. So which is by listening to others. If you don't listen to engage, and don't listen to engage to your teams, you don't listen to engage with your customers, you don't listen to engage with your investors, you will not get the best solutions and best ideas. So if there is one skill you should start practicing as you are scaling up and consciously work on, which can really make a huge difference, it's your ability to listen, and listen to engage, not hear. Listen to engage and understand what the people are saying. Let me move to my third theme, and I'm going to give you a formula. So if you're listening, you may want to write. The formula is E is equal to a multiplication of Q and C. E represents effectiveness, Q represents quality, and C represents communication. Whatever you have as an idea or a solution or a product, has to be something which makes a difference and meets the quality of what is needed, right? So that's why Q. But if you can't communicate it effectively, you can't articulate it clearly, whether it's to your teams or your stakeholders or your consumers or customers, it will absolutely not make an impact. And the multiplying factor is very clear. Imagine if your quality is 5, but if you communicate it at 5, you are getting a 25. While if your quality is 9 and you are communicating it at 2, your outcome is still 18. The biggest differentiator any one of us has, as we not just grow a company or grow a leadership role or grow in the organization or share an idea with people externally, is how effectively we are communicating. And I must say, a lot of people I hear who would have grown and had different experiences in life. Communication is not just about effective English speaking. Communication is about making sure that your listener has got the message the way you wanted to communicate it. So how can you focus on building this skill as a leader of an organization, which will depend a lot, the success will depend a lot on your ability to articulate and communicate. Communication not just shares an idea, it inspires people, it builds a connection, it also develops emotions and builds loyalty. So if you can focus on that, it can be significantly differentiated for you as a possibility. Let me talk a little bit about, I'm going to move gears and talk a little bit about hiring. And we had this question on, a lot of people say you should hire for attitude, you should not just hire for experience and so on. Let me share a different theme with you. I think, yes, experience is important and attitude is also important, but I think it's a combination which comes together, which makes a huge difference. And I'll share with you guys an example, and maybe that will help to illustrate what we are talking about. And Millie will relate to that example very well. So, and I'm naming a person, he's a friend, I'm sure he won't mind that. So we are Diageo. It's a company which is in the alcobev segment, alcohol beverages. Largely the hard spirits is what we focus on. And a lot of our delivery depends on what kind of products we design and deliver for consumers. So which means one needs to know our products, so the chemistry behind it, but also should know how these products will appeal to consumers, the neuroscience behind it, the marketing behind it, and so on. I remember a year and a half back, we were looking at hiring our CTO, Chief Technical Officer. And we were struggling to get the right, because our existing CTO was retiring and he had spent all his life in the industry. And we were struggling to get the right skill set, because when we said we are hiring, we were going to, alcobev. So let's look at our competition. Unfortunately, not much of R&D or technology happens in our competitive space in India. So we said, let's look at the next neighbor or the organizations which are closer, which is consumer goods companies, because the technology leaders there would understand the chemistry, would understand what neuroscience is, and would understand how to operate in a consumer goods environment, right? Our industry. So let's look at Unilevers of the world, P&Gs of the world, and Nestle's of the world. We were still not able to get the right person. And I remember, here's someone I knew from past who reached out to me. This person had worked all his life in healthcare industry, designing healthcare equipment and products for the customers, which in this case happened to be hospitals. And I knew that this person has something which is different. And this person actually reached out to me and said, I want to talk about career and I want to think what I should do in future. We actually ended up hiring this person as CTO of our business. So a person who had spent all his life in healthcare comes to an alcobev industry, which is a completely different platform. And I must say, this has been probably the best decision I've taken in Diageo, because I accordingly influenced our partners and stakeholders to support this decision. This person has completely changed the way we think technology and innovation. If you guys are followers of whiskey, you should see a product which came out very recently, Epitome Reserve, which is the first craft whiskey out of our country, our business in India. And from concept to actual execution, it happened in 85 days, while a typical cycle is 2 years. So you can see the kind of disruption just one person has caused. And if I go back and reflect on what did I look for? Did I look for experience? The answer is yes. Obviously, I didn't hire a finance person to come and do technology. We hired a person who knew what technology is about and how do you innovate and create new products. So we hired for experience. Did we look for attitude? Absolutely, yes. We wanted a person who's passionate about innovation, who's passionate about breaking silos, building connections, and is passionate about delivering for consumers. Absolutely, yes. But we did not hire a person who had the checklist of experience in chemistry or a degree in chemistry, experience in designing products for our industry, but we hired for capability, and capability needed for the role was to innovate, was to really build products for the consumers, understand them, and translate that into a product. So that's what I want to share with you guys. As you are building teams, you've got to look at a combination of experience and really ask the question, what experience is important? Is it 1, 2, 3 a checklist, or is it the right skill set which will help you achieve what you're looking for? And then marry it with attitude to really look at, this is the capability I need in the individual to deliver, not a checklist of experiences. Don't interview people on checklist of experiences and ask them questions on, did you do this? Yes, 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 or not. The moment you start doing it, you're losing the plot. What is important is to understand overall what capabilities are needed, what you have, where is a gap. Not hire people who are exactly like you, a copy paste of what you are. Got to hire people who can come and challenge your thinking and build and fill a gap which you need in your teams versus just align on your thinking. The match has to be in beliefs and values more than anything else. And everyone asks me this question, Arif, how do you get and really understand whether this person has the right values or not? And I must tell you a simple formula. When you're talking to people, don't ask what, just ask why. If you did this, why did you do it? What was the motivating factor for you to really think about this? Why do you think it was a success? Why do you think this made a difference to the business? When you ask 5 questions on why, you will really get to know how the person thinks. You ask 5 questions on why, 5 why questions on 4 different experiences or 4 different projects, you will get to know how this person thinks and what are really beliefs and values of this person and whether it matches with what you're looking for or not. Okay, I'm gonna move to the last theme, guys, and this theme is actually very simple, but it's very important when you're building your teams. Smaller teams tend to gravitate towards the leader, and the strongest bond individuals have is only with the leader, and the leader is the center of the universe. Which you will see in most of your cases in your teams, that you are the center of the universe. You are the glue for the entire team. And if you guys know a bit of chemistry, covalent bonds or any other bonds, imagine an atom at the center and all other atoms around and kind of connected with a bond. You will see this. You will see that situation works very well when you're very small and you're just coming up the curve and the team is building up. But as you start to scale up, the center of the universe or the leader does not have enough time, energy, or capacity to build these strong bonds. You're building a fragile team. You will build a team whose success will depend on your ability to connect, to translate goals, to share what needs to be done, to communicate, or to listen to. If you want to scale up in a way that this team nurtures on its own and actually creates bonds amongst itself. So imagine a circle at the center, which is center of universe, which is you, four people around that circle, the other atoms, and there are bonds between these atoms itself. That will create a very strong molecule, something where bonds are far stronger and will last longer for the success. And a few examples and thoughts why I say so. If there is a problem and a disconnect in the team and they reach out to you, do you intervene, respond, ask question, or do you tell your team, go back and you sort out amongst yourselves? You're adults, you're part of the same team, got to have constructive conflict. If you can't resolve, I'm available to resolve. But if you don't display that behavior and encourage people to have direct conversations, there is no way you will build that bond amongst them, which is strong enough. You will always gravitate and allow people to reach out to you all the time versus the bonds amongst them becoming stronger. Who's a technical expert in this group? Most of the time, the fallacy which we end up having is that the person who knows the most is the technical expert. But the real question you need to ask, if there are 6 people in my team and most of the people have technical problem, whom do they go to? If they have a situation where they are frustrated about something, who's the person they reach out to and build connections with them? If they want to really have a career conversation, who's the person they talk to? Who's the agony aunt whom they reach out to when they are really troubled about something? If you don't know your team that way and really understand and appreciate who's the glue, who's the expert, and create that opportunity for that to happen in the team versus you being the center of the universe, being the glue, being the expert, you will not create a self-sustaining team. You will create a team which will be heavily dependent on you. And your limitation, your time commitment or lack of time availability will determine the success of that team, not the health of the team and capability which exists in the team. So that was a theme I wanted to share on team building, folks. Those are some of the thoughts and ideas. Hopefully some of it resonated with you. We do have 20 minutes. If you have any questions, would love to answer that.
Thank you, Arif. It was especially nice to hear you share your personal experiences. There's much to draw upon from there. So like Arif mentioned, let's put forward your questions. If anyone has anything to say, please come ahead.
Arif, can I ask a question?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So, Arif, on one side, of course, and thank you for those insights, both from, I would say, from the employee working in a startup and from a founder, especially what one has seen, and I don't know what the group feels, is if it is a single founding company, the what sometimes we fail to understand is, one, the journey of a founder is very, very lonely. And because they don't have anybody to go to, very rarely do they have somebody to go to. I think a big miss or a gap is a system that would which is provided for the founders to go to, because they of course are not, as much as they come with multiple skills in terms of running a company, they are not perfect human beings either, and most of them, as you said rightly, Arif, are very young founders. Anything on your mind you can share with us on how do you build a system for these founders to constantly upgrade, renew, make themselves better in more ways than one?
So I'll answer it at 2 levels, Millie. First is, I understand completely what you're saying, that, the journey is lonely. And I think it's quite challenging because you're dealing with day in and out of pressure of scaling up, growing the organization, building capability, delivering, getting the right funding, investor support, and so on. So it is extremely tough, much more tougher than anyone else in a established environment goes through. But I must say that there are a few things which we got to realize as individuals. First is admit and accept that I don't know all the answers and I need to learn. And if I'm willing to do that, there are resources available whom I can go and reach out to. So that's the first one: admit and accept. The second thing which I would say is that each one of us, whether we are running a company or running a function or an individual contributor, actually need to have a set of people who are actually our board of directors. And this board of directors is not board of directors for a company. This is board of directors for me as an individual, Arif as a person, or a person who wants to pursue career. And I'll give you an example of my board of directors. I actually have 3 people. Whenever I have a question to find out if this is going to work or not as an idea in the company, there is someone in the sales function, and this person is a cluster head of a region. He's the first person I pick up the phone and ask him, do you think this makes sense? And the reason I do it is this person is fairly early in career, so has no inhibitions to share with me. And I feel so that this person I can trust with. Second, is very well connected to the ground, is part of a cluster, knows what happens on the ground, what people deal on a daily basis with. So has a better lens than my lens on what realities on the ground are. And last but not the least, this person also deals with all kinds of challenges of managing dynamics in the organization, which is managing a small team or managing a boss and so on. So he's fairly, experienced in managing different kinds of responsibilities and roles as a person. So his view of the situation is broader than someone who's just doing one thing in the organization. So I always go to this person and ask whether this works or not. And I really appreciate and take his advice on whether this would work or not. Whenever I am in a situation where I want to really, get some advice and for myself and really think that I need someone who can give me an outside-in view. There is someone who was my colleague for many, many years in different capacity roles, right now works in a different company, is a peer, not really my boss or so. But I have immense trust that this person will be transparent, but at the same time, empathetic towards my situation, will appreciate the challenge I'm going through, and will give me an advice based on that. Whenever I want to talk about career and talk about, how do I grow and what should I really focus on, there is another individual who was my manager 7-8 years back. And I really think this person has the ability to put a mirror in front of me. Because when you're talking about careers, you need someone who can actually put a mirror in front of you. So my advice, the first point which I really wanted to say, Millie, is that each one of us are responsible for and should own what we want to achieve and what we want to do. In our world, we are always lonely. We got to create this support system around ourselves. And I'm not saying the best answer is have 3 or 4 people, but each one of us need to determine who's our board of directors for us as individuals. And some of the successful founders, if you hear them and read their stories, you will realize each one of them had people like this who help them, advise them, who had no interest in what they are doing, no interest when I say monetary or financial interest, but had all the interest in really helping the individual grow and develop. So that's the first thing which I would say. Each one of us has to do it for ourselves. The second thing which I would say is I think, NASSCOM is a great platform. And I think some of conversations and coaching and support which people who are just starting new organizations need is more experienced leadership to bounce off thoughts and ideas and suggestions versus really help them run their enterprise. So if you can create an opportunity, and it could be topical in nature, for this group of people to interact with people on topics, and it could be like this or something which is curated based on voice of customer, based on what this team is saying is really needed. I think it can really help as another platform which is more structured and systemic. But the most powerful one is what you create for yourself, not what the system does for you.
Thanks, Arif. Thanks for that perspective.
Maybe I will jump in and ask one question before others also ask. Arif, what we heard from a lot of startups, specifically a bit more early stage ones, is the founders usually struggle a bit in terms of delegation of responsibilities, because till that particular point of time, they used to own everything, and suddenly, immediately, they start delegating, and they will not be satisfied with quality because they are not the ones that are doing, and so on and so forth. Any advice or insights on those on that front? Because team building is something that any startup founder needs to start building upon.
Yeah, so we talked about it earlier today, but I'll just say, the simplest formula is freedom within a framework. You got to decide for yourself what are absolutely not compromisable things where you will absolutely dirty your hands, and you should stay there based on what is really needed as an outcome. But you got to identify 60% of the work which gets done where you will let go, and be involved more in terms of understanding how things are developing, giving inputs and insights, and helping it become better versus driving decisions there. It's easier said than done. So let me give some tips which can directly help. Which are the meetings where you will play a lead role versus which are the meetings where you will actually play a role to be fly on the wall? Which are the meetings where you will just ask questions and give inputs to get creative insights, move forward, versus just tell people what to do? What stages of development, movement forward you would like to be involved hands-on, where you would like to just stay out and then probably ask questions and not really get involved hands-on? Where do you not say when you know the right answer in what platforms, and let other people speak and stop your desire to speak because you are seeing what ideas are coming up, and maybe the right answer will come, and there may be a situation where a better answer than what you have may come. So when you have this powerful urge to speak because you know the answer, that is the time when you should stop and not speak and see what others have to say and others have to share. Obviously, the piece which you need to realize that as a leader of the company, you have the last word. Let it not be the first word. Let the first words come from others. You will always have the last word. Nobody will stop you from having that.
Those are great advices. Thanks, Arif.
Thank you. Anyone else who has any questions? Avlokita, Fiona, if you'd like to come on.
No, Dolly, thank you.
Navratan here. There are a good number of startups who are now going international, thanks to a lot of bilateral ecosystem players and including the multinationals that we are in India. A big challenge for them is hiring the local people over there. Many of these founders have not worked in multinational companies, and they do not know the intercultural differences and the way different countries work with hiring and managing people. What kind of tips can you give it to our startups?
So it's a great question, Avratan, and we should understand that this is not just a challenge which startups have. Even large corporations, when they decide to enter a new market, you will always find this as a challenge because you don't really know the roots of the game, which could be very different. It could be employment laws, it could be laws to run the business. First is the harder side of the equation: what contracts to have, what employment laws, how do you scale up, how can you really have an entity there. And then will be the softer side of the equation, which is culture and so on. And when you're entering new, you're small anyways. You don't want to, boil the ocean and create a large infrastructure to really disrupt. I think the best thing one can do, and which I've done in the past when we entered many countries as we were expanding our business in different parts of the world, was to really find people who could help you do that. Today, if you go and start a business in a new country, I'm sure you'll find enough people who can give you advice within that market, more as consultants, more as people who will help you get the right perspective versus, you building a large team for it. Start small, don't start big. Start small by understanding and appreciating the entire ecosystem, which is rules of engagement, how do you do business, rules of employment, what contracts, what ways you should hire, which will involve all compensation structures, all of that. And then also understanding and appreciating what is big do's and don'ts from a culture side. As long as you're focused on these 3-4 themes and you find people who can help you get started, you can scale up. To get the right people to help, I must tell you, there are more than enough references. If you come to NASSCOM and ask 5 people, or you go on LinkedIn and check, I'm just using an example, but say you find a person of a reputed company who's say a GE Healthcare HR leader in Africa, and you want to enter an Africa market. If you reach out to the person and say, I need an advice, I must tell you, nobody hesitates in the world we live in today. You ask 3 people and you'll get the best advice and references without any cost. I remember I wanted to start a business at some point in time in past in one of the African countries, and we had never done business there. I went on LinkedIn at that time, looked at HR people of 3 reputed companies, reached out to them and said, I don't know how to do business in this country. How do I offer employment contract? What would work? How do I hire people? What channels to use? And I think what they really said is that, Arif, very simple. These are the 2 people you pick up the phone and call. You ask 3 different people, you'll get similar references and you can take it from there. So my suggestion is hyper-connected world, use references, find about people, start small, and then you'll be able to scale up.
Thanks. Great.
That was really good advice. Anyone else? We could probably take up one last question since we're getting towards closing time. Okay, so I take that as a no. But Arif, thank you once again. It's been very informative and very interesting to hear from you. And we really appreciate you taking the time out. So thanks. Thanks to everyone who joined us. And we hope to see you all soon again. Stay safe and stay healthy. Until later.
Thank you, guys. Wish you all the best. Thanks.
Thank you.